Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Arm Wrestling Extra podcast. This is Hollywood Matt Connelly with the double biceps. It isn't the contract and legal requirement every single time we appear on camera. Podcast partner, the co-founder, co-breather of air, co-wearer of clothes. At this very room, it is in fact the master of disaster, the king of sting, Thunderlips, the ultimate male, the Count of Monte Cristo, the winner of the Dave Stockbridge of the Year award. It is in fact Dave Stockbridge. Welcome to your own show.
Thank you very much, and a very warm welcome as always, Hollywood Matt Connelly. Thank you very much.
That's right. A big week in the arm wrestling world.
Big week in the arm wrestling world, Matt, and
always a big week.
It is, isn't it? You know, every week there's another huge development, a scandal, and something to report on. And the last couple of weeks, in particular, have been big at an international level, and of course here in Australia on a much more local level. And what's caught your eye, Hollywood Matt Connelly?
Yeah, well, we had a big international event for another one of the East versus West cards. So we had a lot of the US-based and Western pullers taking on some of the best in Europe. And Ryan Bowen was also featured on that card.
Representing Australia, as always.
That's right, that's right. And it's funny because it is supposed to be the title is called East versus West, and obviously we're very south.
Very south, very east. You're not getting any more east than Australia.
That's right. So he did end up losing his match 3-0, but in the comments and in the stream, everyone was saying, he's not from the West. He's not. It doesn't count for a loss for us.
They didn't specify whether it was geographically or culturally East versus West. I think that's the issue. They weren't very clear from the get-go. But
exactly.
Maybe Engen can address that as we move into the future. So for those people that mightn't be familiar with East versus West, it's essentially a gathering of the best arm wrestlers in the world, all organised by Engen Terzi and held in.
I think this one was in Turkey.
In Turkey, yeah. There's been talk about maybe Dubai coming up in the not too distant future, but being held in Turkey, and a huge event. Some of the biggest names of the sport, or the biggest names in the sport, and also some inductions into the Arm Wrestling Hall of Fame. I note as well that came out of that particular very eventful weekend.
That's right. Yes, Cobra Rhodes, who is one of the legends of the sport's been around for 20 plus years in the arm wrestling world, maybe even longer, but he was featured on the card as a competitor as well, and also garnered a spot for himself in the Hall of Fame, which I think was a very big surprise for him. I don't think that they had announced that this was going to happen, that they were doing these Hall of Fame announcements. It
seemed to be a bit informal, the announcements over dinner, just a bit of a surprise to everybody.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's like, we should make a Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Who do you want to be in it? Who's here?
It was quite touching because obviously Engen had given it some thought in advance, and there was John Brzenk received his induction and was presented with that by Devon Larratt, which was a really sweet moment, and was it Big Daddy Goodrich was?
Yeah, that's right, Gary Goodrich. Yeah,
Gary Goodrich was there as well. So and inducted into the Arm Wrestling Hall of Fame as well. So a lot of people would know Gary from his MMA days, and but before MMA, he was a world class arm wrestler.
That's right, absolutely. Yeah, he did also jump on and do some commentary early in the event. So great to have him there, and he is one of those pioneers of arm wrestling. And you're right, he moved into MMA after that, and that's when most people would have recognised him from, and then gone, hang on, what is Gary Goodrich on this? So actually he used to be a really top arm wrestler. Oh really? So it's quite a surprise for people when they find that out. That's
so a big weekend, big results. Any upsets? Any results that were a bit of a surprise to you, Matt? Because I know you keep a very keen eye on international arm wrestling, and so if you were a betting man, how would you have gone over that weekend?
Yeah, I think there wasn't anything that was way out of the ordinary or really sort of controversial or anything. Probably the main event, which was Devon Larratt and Dmitry Prudnik, was the featured one that everyone was sort of looking forward to seeing. And it did end up being that Devon walked away with a 3-0 victory and sort of solidified himself in that number 2 position behind Levan.
Perhaps the biggest controversy that came out of that particular fight was the behaviour of the corner woman, in this case, Devon's wife, who was quite vocal and is known to be anyway. And for many of the viewers, that seemed to be somewhat of a distraction, and for some, thought it was perhaps borderline disrespectful as well. I know she refutes this and has since come out in a video just suggesting that was never her intention, and we'll take her on face value with that. But it is a partner behaviour has popped up on several occasions to be somewhat of a distraction when it comes to arm wrestling. How did you read that one, Matt?
Yeah, I think moving forwards, what they need to do is say that, okay, the corners are restricted to this area and
to a corner.
Yeah.
Of the room.
That's right. The far corner. So obviously she sort of crept quite close to the table as the event was going on and yelling her criticism of the referee and during the match quite loudly, quite vocally, which did end up with one of the referees, the down referee, having to actually stop what he was doing to sort of say, look, hang on, just we're in control. We see what's going on. Just relax. So yeah, she did move quite close, which was I think they'll probably address that in future events and say, look, this is the area that you need to remain in as a corner person, because if you are standing that close to the competitors as they are being set up by the referees, it can potentially give your athlete an advantage, or you can distract the referees from doing what they're doing. Yes, I do think that they'll probably adjust those things moving forward.
I think as arm wrestling starts to mature as a professional sport as well, some of this conduct will be ironed out. One would imagine so, and in part because viewers don't want to see it. It's also it's not creating the best of environments for those people that are working under pressure, the officials, who are often volunteers or certainly the lowest paid people that are there if they are getting paid at all. And it doesn't add anything to the spectacle of the sport or to it doesn't enable others to hold the sport in any higher esteem when they see that type of behaviour coming out of a corner or from a partner or from anybody for that matter that's involved in the running of an event. So whether it's an overly vocal, very passionate partner, or whether it's the opposite and somebody just walking around on their phone in the background, I think whoever it is that's producing the content for the viewer needs to be very, very mindful that that's no longer an arm wrestling table. That is now a set, and that needs to be treated accordingly. Yeah. And that space needs to be somewhat sacred and held out to be just for the performers.
Absolutely. And you can see that there were certain aspects of different promotions that have happened in the past where they have set up they've been quite clever with the way that they've designed their set, and there's almost a physical barricade between somebody being able to have access that closely to the competitors. Like when you look at the WOW setup, they had like a fence around the competitors, which had all their WOW logos and their sponsor logos, and the athletes would stand almost on a little raised stage or platform so that they were higher than everyone else, so the audience could see what was going on. It's very well designed, but the corner people were restricted to being on the outside of the fence, and so in between rounds the athlete would go over to the corner. They had a chair there and they could obviously talk and interact with their corner, but that corner could not, unless they jumped over the fence and came in contact with the athletes, they couldn't influence the match as much as what was happening on the weekend, where it was just a straight stage. They had the table in the middle and anybody could just wander around freely, which is why you saw Jody very passionately getting involved in the setup and yelling and screaming from maybe a metre or a metre and a half away from the table. So an enormous distraction for the officials and the viewers alike, and perhaps even the athletes. Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know if Devon's mentioned it at all. But,
probably not. There was a key. Well, he might not have. I mean, Jody, as you said, did address it on her channel, and I think her message is basically, too bad that's what I did.
Yeah.
I was allowed to do it and I did it.
Yeah.
But and that's fine if she wants to do that, and they'll probably look at preventing people from doing that in the future.
And perhaps it's will come up. Was there? Did we learn anything from East versus West apart from not have cornermen a foot away from the table?
Well, they've learned that Devon has sort of put himself. It's a difficult thing with their top rankings because you've got Levan, who's so dominant in number
so
one,
far ahead of everybody else currently, yeah.
And then Devon solidifying his position in number 2, but having been beaten 6-0 by Levan, and it really does paint a difficult picture to find a credible opponent for Levan, because it's like if you've beaten number 2 6-0 and really he kind of dominated Devon throughout that entire match. It's hard to make a compelling case for a matchup against him.
It's really hard because arm wrestling, unlike many sports, many strength sports, there's so much technique that's involved in it that just getting a really strong, like getting Hapthor on the table, for instance, is not going to make any difference.
That's right.
You'd need somebody who was 250 kilos with that skill set in order to even have a chance at this stage, one would imagine. Levan is so physically dominant and so technically proficient and is such a student of the sport that it's hard to see anybody catching up.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's almost the Roger Federer situation with tennis, where he was number 1 for, 10 years in a row or something.
Yeah.
And a lot of people did start to lose interest because it's like, well, no one's a challenge for this guy. And it wasn't until, guys like Djokovic and some competitors, Rafael, Nadal was able to really start challenging, and they had some amazing back and forth matches. But it took several years for them to catch up to the point that Federer was at, and you're sort of seeing that now with Levan, who's so far ahead. And then it's going to take, as you said, like a long period of time for somebody to develop not only the technique, the skill, the structure, the physicality, and the desire to be a world champion in arm wrestling. So he might be at the top until he retires.
He could be the Don Bradman of arm wrestling, literally. He could be the Don Bradman of arm wrestling. It could be a long, long time before we come across a great of Levan stature. So as you mentioned, Devon solidifying his position as number 2, and I would say that the East versus West format was pretty much formulated to circumvent some of the discussion over who's the best. Is it the Russians or is it the Americans? And that had kind of played out and flared up even during COVID, whilst athletes weren't able to compete and test themselves against each other. But it also became somewhat more poignant, given that the two rival federations of arm wrestling, say promotions, seemingly have faded somewhat in significance and prominence, and so leaving this void, this vacuum, from which Engin Terzi's decided to create East versus West, so to sort out who is the best from the various hemispheres, and put them all on the table, which has been fantastic. But it also leaves the question of what comes next. How many of these events do you need before you actually answer that question? Who's the best from the East versus West? And we might have already got there, and we're only a few events in.
That's right, absolutely, yeah, for sure. And it is difficult when you've only got. I mean, they're probably cycling through these top guys from each nation or each side of the world. There may be 15 to 20 guys on each side, and they've had several matchups together. But yeah, it does come to a point where it's like, okay, well, we've seen all the potential matchups. We've got a pretty good idea as to where everyone stands, but where do we go from here? Is there titles? Is there other formats? Is there other tournaments or different ways that we could see these athletes compete other than super matches? I do think super matches is definitely the way to go, and I do like the fact that they're putting on these sort of cards. The only thing I would change is to have some sort of reason as to why this card is happening and where is it leading. So if you win your match on King of the Table, for example, what does that mean?
Where does it go to? What's the next logical step? Where do the fans, where does their imagination go to after that match has ended? These are all questions. I don't know if Engin is giving any thought to them, or whether it's of any consideration, because it does seem to me Engin is very focused on getting the very finest arm wrestling athletes in the world in the one place and putting on the best show that he knows how. And I think he's done a tremendous job in as much as to the longevity of that as a format moving forward before the interest starts to trail off and wane, I guess time will tell. Time will tell. And at the opposite end of that spectrum, we had a regional event here in Australia, the Australian Arm Wrestling Federation's national titles, and held in Sydney.
Yep.
And that was very much a tournament, worked all the way through. So opposite ends of the format spectrum. And you, my friend, were live streaming that event, or you were commentating. I would say there was no copyright infringement. You were simply you were commentating on the event, and for 4 or 5 hours. Yeah. So how was it that you came about the streaming the event and being the voice of the national titles in 2022?
I don't think I would
unofficial voice.
Unofficial.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, I was expecting that Jake Ward or Ryan Bowen would have most likely have gone live and have commentated on the event. Jake Ward, unfortunately, has just recently undergone hip surgery.
Yeah.
And so he...
Playing footy this week, apparently, so everything's fine.
Yeah, that's right. Yes, he is on the recovery. But during the national titles, he popped into the chat for a couple of minutes and just said, look, sorry, guys, the medication is winning the round today. So he wasn't able to sort of stay, I don't know if he was able to stay awake or whether or not it was like, hey, I'd rather not be on camera while I'm,
hallucinating or something. Otherwise, just go live yourself. There's probably views in it. Yeah,
that's right. Maybe that would have been his best episode.
Who knows?
Just him going.
He's lost the opportunity now.
That's right.
Having said that, we do wish you a very, very swift recovery, Jake, and hope you get well very, very soon and are up to full strength and running another ultra marathon sometime.
That's
in the not too distant future.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So I did see a bunch of his sort of supporters that were in the chat there, and I was like, well, if no one's going to go live, I'll go live and provide somewhere that people can, have somebody that's commentating on the matches and be a little, hub of activity where, we can respond to comments and people can feel like they're part of something that's happening.
And the Arm Wrestling Federation hadn't done this, though, had they? They did have a live stream, but no commentary on the live stream. Is that because Jake was to do that event or wasn't able to or was this organisationally, or they just hadn't given that a lot of thought, or we're not too sure?
I'm not sure. Yeah, okay. I'd say that Jake would have been the guy for that event.
Well, you would. Yeah.
He'd be your number one pick.
He'd be your number one pick. But after Hollywood, Matt Connelly, of course. You would imagine so. But Jake obviously was on the bench on this occasion, and so as a result, there was nothing coming through on the Federation feed of the event tell me what your thoughts were on the production values, Matt, and what would you look to improve into the future?
Yeah, well, the good thing about the AAF is that they put something together. You've got people that are volunteering their time, and as I said on the live stream, most of the time, well, you don't get paid as a volunteer, and a lot of the time you're actually putting your own money in to get these things happening and get them up and running off the ground. So as an arm wrestling fan and as an arm wrestling competitor, I highly appreciate the fact that there is a national competition that people can go and enter.
Was there an entry fee?
I am not sure. I think there was. I think there was, but I'm not 100% sure. Yeah, I think that there was to enter. Yeah. And depending on if you did both arms or one arm, it might have been a different price.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah,
second arm half price.
The second arm,
something like that.
It is actually something like that.
Excellent.
Yeah, well, that's what Tim the Viking Graham would do when we used to run the state tournament here. Is that it was like I think it was $30 for one arm and $50 for two. If you had two arms and you wanted to use both.
Three arms, there was a special deal. But
3 arms is for free because everyone wants to see that.
That's right.
We'll pay you.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So they put the titles on. It was a national tournament. It was held under the WAF Federation rules. WAF Federation, it's ATM machine. So the sort of the European style of arm wrestling with the very strict setups and elbow fouls are called quite sternly.
Yeah.
That is the rule set that.
And that's because if you happen to win, then you get to go on
right.
and compete at an international level under that rule set. So
exactly.
Yeah. So they don't have any latitude when it comes to that rules. They're performing under the auspices of the governing authority there.
Exactly, that's right. Yeah, so if you win the national title here in Australia, or you win one of the divisions here in the competition that happened in Sydney, you are qualified to compete in the national or the international federations of WAF around the world.
So Matt, as somebody who was watching that live stream of yours, it was hard to not sense your frustration. Possibly because you said it about 30 or 40 times in a half-hour period, but there was some degree of frustration, and perhaps talk to us about your frustrations, Matthew. Maybe this is a safe space. We can talk about this openly. There was a period there that was bringing you great frustration as you were trying to bring this event to the world, and what was that? What's going on there?
Yeah, I think that the streaming quality could have been better. So in talking about the things that they did well and then the things that can be improved on, I'll just go through the things that they did well. That they put the tournament together, everything ran well. There was definitely a sense of positivity that everyone was there to arm wrestle and enjoy themselves. The matches happened at a professional standard. There was crown winners. There was the prizes were awarded, and the people were rightfully identified as national champion. There was a double elimination format tournament. Everything in terms of the structure of the tournament went really well, and I really want to highlight that the volunteers that did put their time and effort in to make sure that the event took place in the first place, and volunteered to referee and put tables together and put everything together. They did a fantastic job. My frustration was from the streaming side of things, which I think can be improved on in future events.
Did you like two tables at the same time?
There was elements of it that I think could be improved, and one of those is that they did have two tables in frame.
Two tables isn't twice the fun, is that what you're saying?
It's difficult to concentrate. That's the problem.
And on occasions where I was checking in on the stream, I didn't notice that there was a difference in caliber often between the competitors on one table and the competitors on another. So you'd have an A-grade match that you would maybe even pay money for the pay-per-view, if there was a pay-per-view, to see these two competitors across from the table from each other. And then just next to it was two people you'd never heard of who were appeared to be beginners that were sharing the stage with these guys, which is great when you want to be all egalitarian about it. But from a fan's perspective, it kind of diluted and from that moment, and there was some degree of distraction and not enough emphasis put on perhaps the quality matchups that were seen throughout the day.
Absolutely, yeah, that's right. And that was one of the frustrating aspects as a viewer and as a fan of arm wrestling, and as part of the Australian Arm Wrestling Federation committee. It was like, I can see that this could have been done better. I would have loved if it was, set up the way that I think it could have been set up. And the connection, unfortunately, was poor. It kept dropping and did miss some key matches.
Key moments, yeah.
One of which was very upsetting that I missed. It was Mario Tambakis and Brett Coots.
Oh, yes.
Grand final on the left hand. Oh, I wanted to see that match for like a year. And they're all set up. They're about to go, and then the stream just died. And then when it came back, it was like, oh, Mario's the winner. It's like, I missed it. I didn't get to see it. So
there won't be a replay.
No, that's right. Yeah. You don't get that moment back,
no.
Which is difficult because, as a fan, like, I really wanted to see that moment. And it would have been fantastic if production side of it was set in a way that it went well without those issues. But yeah, as you did mention, so having two tables.
Well, it was whispered to me that some of the best footage that had been seen from that event came from the phones of partners that were at that event.
It did, unfortunately. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so when you've got two tables running at the same time, obviously the difficulty is that you're trying to keep track of two different matches that are happening at once. So as you said, if you've got a top level match on one side and then you're sort of looking back and forth, then it's like, okay, but you've missed a slip there, and then it's like, okay, I missed the pin then, and I missed the pin then, and it's
it's a little bit like having a footy oval, but 4 teams playing at the same time.
That's right.
It's hard, and 2 balls. It's who's playing who, and it's very, very difficult, very distracting.
Absolutely. So what I would do, and what hopefully we'll look at doing in the future, is having a featured table only that's on stream. If you're going to put something in front of the audience, it should be the best quality.
The best that you've got to give.
That's right. Your best athletes, your most known and interesting matchups, put them on where everyone can see them, and you can have as many matches as you want going on the side tables. Like set up tables on the side and run them through the lower ends of the brackets. And then if there's an interesting match, put that on the main table because that's the ones that people want to see. And the most competitive matches are the ones that are the most interesting. And if you're recording the side tables at the same time, it's quite easy to just set up a camera. And an interesting match does take place on one of the side tables. After the event, you can go back and find that footage and be like, well, that was an awesome match. We've got it covered. Here it is. Let's upload that as a separate thing and say, okay, this is an amazing match that took place in the Nationals in the early bracket. 2 people we didn't know, but this match is incredible. You got to see it.
Yeah.
So
bring it back.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. As opposed to putting every single match on there, because a lot of matches in tournaments, especially in the early rounds, are quite either one-sided and just whitewashed, or it's not the greatest,
Yeah, and I guess there was that break in between the rounds, I guess you'd say, and then the finals, and there was a pretty long break. It was about 20 or so minutes where there was just dead air, and it looked to be that people at the venue would have just been seeing replays of a previous event that had happened earlier in the year. Nothing really related to the state titles that would have led to this event, or this event was the culmination of those. So there was no reference to those more local level competitions, but bit of stuff, bit of filler coming from there. But that would have been a great opportunity to get some of those more hotly contested fights into the call, and to maybe raise the profile of some of these athletes that mightn't have walked away with a trophy, but nonetheless put in a great performance during the day, and might well be people that'll feature on cards into the future.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. So as you said, I mean, if you've got state tournaments running throughout the year, there should be a whole bunch of amazing matches and amazing moments between the athletes that are more than likely there today, there at this moment. And you can use that to say, well, here is, let's say, Taryn Broad winning the under 80 kilos right arm in New South Wales titles, and he's going to be competing in the next thing, and that's the guy you need to watch out for, this guy. Or, here's Sam Burnett, who's competed internationally, and, look out for him. He's a killer, and you could pre-package some video highlights and put them for those moments either before the event or during the breaks that keep people like, oh, I want to see this, and they're about to have a match, so that'd be great. I want to see this guy. He looks awesome. Yeah. So yes, I think that could be something that we could do moving forwards.
Now, one of your big frustrations was something that Phil and the team couldn't do anything about, and that was slips to straps.
Yes.
So there was a lot of that going on. I know it's a bugbear for you anyway, and I know moving forward, with any competitions that you're involved in running, it is unlikely to be slipping to straps. It will be starting in straps more than likely. And
right.
and I guess your frustration kind of spoke to a lot of spectators' frustration, because you really do build yourself up. You kind of edge yourself to expect something's going to happen, only to Oh man! So the adrenaline dump afterwards. I mean, so this is something that you've commented on several occasions before, and something that you would like to see change in the culture. I know Laz, one of our previous guests on the show, Laz Boto, he was, there's beauty in the slip. You don't see the beauty in the slip, obviously, Matt, but I don't know if spectators do either, really. So if it's not doesn't necessarily make the sport any more watchable, perhaps.
Right.
Yeah.
No, you hit the nail on the head with that. I am not a fan of slips at all, and I'm very much not a fan of people slipping and not being called as a loss. And when the rules clearly state, and especially in the WAF rules, they're quite strict. In a losing position, which means that's the center of the table, that's the winning position, that's the losing position. Anything in the losing position that you slip, that's an obvious, deliberate slip, is a loss. And it just frustrates me.
I didn't see it called as much as perhaps it could have been. Also, in terms of strictly speaking, there was talk that Asada might be turning up at this particular event, because there was the federation put out a press release some time ago to say that it was a drug-free organisation, and that it's working under the Asada regime, and well, we know that that's a very expensive, a costly regime to maintain. I've heard rumours of $5,000 a test, and from what I understand, they don't just come to do one test. If they're coming to an event, you might find that the whole roster of athletes are tested, not just a sample of those. And so it could easily be the Australian Arm Wrestling Federation could be up for 40 or 50 competitors time $5,000. So so a brave call. I'm not aware of any testing that took place, though.
I'm not either. But yes, I did see the press release. It was probably maybe 6 to 8 months ago. They put up that post that you're talking about. And
then again more recently.
That's right. And then leading into the national competition, again, they highlighted, look, we're a drug-free organisation, and competitors, I think it was worded in a way, it was like potentially you can be tested. And I think the only way that they would be looking at that is if somebody is very obviously,
changed
under a high suspicion that they have, exactly, they've changed all of a sudden. They've turned in from Bruce Banner to the Hulk. Maybe something going on there. So I think, well, as I said, I'm not aware that any testing has taken place as of yet, but that's not to say that it hasn't. But it is one of those things that they have implemented to try to make sure that people are competing fairly against athletes that are also not unnatural. So it is one of those difficult things, because the cost is so great to implement a very high level drug testing protocol. It's serious money, and legitimately serious money. And it depends whether you're doing urine tests or blood tests or both, or what are you testing for.
What if you piss blood? Do you save money?
You probably got a problem. You save money. You get your money back.
Positive.
Your third arm. You save money. You get a discount. That's right. But it is. I mean, even the tester themselves has to go through certain training, and they have to, observe certain protocols when they're performing these tests. So it's not like a very loose thing that you should make. Oh yeah, we're drug testing now, and it's like, what protocols are you using? Like, who's going to be there? How often are you doing it? So those elements, for me, it's unknown. But I can see the positive side of it, that they want people to compete without having used performance enhancing supplements, let's say. But in terms of,
they should be spending more time with Matt from last week. Get the right supplements.
Matt Burke, that's Matt right, Burke. He was our guest. Yeah. You had me worried for a second. Hang on a minute. Who's been talking about
my supplements, my secrets.
That's right. We'll have to edit this bit out. No. Absolutely. So, I mean, ideally, you do want to go into a competition and know that it's fair as possible.
Yeah.
But I think, personally, I don't think arm wrestling at this level is at a point where high level drug testing is a feasible possibility, because as you said, the cost is enormous.
Yeah. Well, I suspected so, and I suspect it was a bit of a bluff, but good. That's I guess like I say, very expensive to implement. Not so expensive just to bluff people. So maybe that's just enough to keep it. But I guess the lure of money will be such. For instance, if you can imagine the sport growing, and as it becomes more professional and prize money does become a greater amount, that competitors are going to look for every edge and every opportunity to give themselves every chance of course, securing the win. So
absolutely.
So perhaps at the amateur level that the Australian Arm Wrestling Federation are working at, that's probably probably not no bad way to go. It's just to throw out the threat and the potential and the possibility of being tested, but just to keep people scared and away, perhaps, that might otherwise have had grand ambitions and
that's right,
and very, very high testosterone levels.
That's right, very, very high grand ambitions.
40, I think, is the
that's
number.
40. Yeah, 40. 0 to 6 is normal. 6 being extreme. We'll go 40.
40.
And we'll like Alistair over him.
It's over him levels.
That's right.
Uber him.
That's right.
So they've had they had 2 year layoff. There weren't any Australian 2 years last year. Anything going on last year? I think. I don't believe there is.
Yeah, potentially, because COVID did ruin a lot of events.
Yeah, so there's a couple of years there. Not much has gone on. I think their first event back was earlier this year, which was the over the top tournament in Queensland, and this event being the first, I believe, for a couple of years of Australian titles. So after 2 years, a lot of time to think about it. Look, I'm gonna. If I could rate it out of 10, and I couldn't say 7, I'd probably say 6 rather than 8. I wouldn't say 8, and I'd probably be very kind 6. I thought, my personal opinion was that in watching it, it was messy. It wasn't very well thought out. The audio was a distraction, so I believe that they had unlicensed music in the background, which also would have meant that their live stream would have been taken down or compromised, or the reach certainly would have been compromised. Has been. Yeah. So what a shame. You put on the event. Your sponsors are expecting there to be some legs to the event thereafter in terms of video views, and gone. So the music was overbearing. The setup. So the venue looked great, except for on screen. So, which was quite, I could understand somebody walking into that room and saying, "This is perfect. This is where we're going to have it. This is the ideal space." And then, but on camera, it did not look any better than somebody's shed. So, in some part because of the way that the camera was positioned, in other part because there was a large screen behind, and the large screen, the camera was not positioned in consideration of that large screen, nor was the stage. The stage could have probably been higher by another foot or so in order to actually utilise the screen as part of the backdrop for the live stream. That was a missed opportunity. Not having somebody backed up. So Jake did have a scheduled operation. It was known when that operation was going to be for some time. There would have been ample opportunity to reach out to, let's say, a Hollywood Matt Connelly or a similar type of figure who might be available to assist in the call of the event, or simply that be taken care of internally. I'm sure there's people there that know what they're talking about and wouldn't mind having a chat in front of camera with a microphone in front of them, but just so that the people at home could follow along, especially given that there was some degree of messiness going on screen. It would have been good to have somebody help you along the way and understand what's coming next. And when that break, that 20-minute break or so, somebody just to explain what was going on and while we were sitting around and waiting, for instance. But also to give a bit of background on competitors. Is this somebody new to the table, or is this somebody that's been competing regionally for a while, or is this a former state champion? All of that type of information would have been really, really helpful and not terribly expensive in order to put together. And I would have thought with some thought, consideration and due diligence these matters. But probably the most disappointing aspect of the whole thing was that juniors weren't able to compete. And so you've had no national titles for 2 years. The first chance that juniors have had to compete have been, and I guess neither of the juniors that I'm thinking of were probably even involved in the sport pre-COVID, so hadn't ever had the chance to compete at a national level. Weren't afforded that opportunity because the venue was a casino and they wouldn't permit juniors into the room.
That's right.
So what that says to younger people that are getting interested in the sport, or those that have just recently gotten into the sport and competing, I don't know. Well, I know, no, it wouldn't be a positive thing. You're not going to feel... it's not the most inclusive thing to do in the world. And certainly for a sport that's recently exploded in popularity, that is now developing a groundswell of interest within young people, to completely banish them from the event was hugely disappointing and detrimental, and I would have thought worth avoiding at almost any cost. But unfortunately, no. The venue was retained, which I wouldn't have even minded that much if it was optimised. But it wasn't. Literally that event could have been held in a shed and nobody would have known any different.
Right.
Because the camera didn't tell you. It was only the people that were there that were showing you what the rest of the venue looked like. There wasn't a camera panning around. There wasn't anybody talking to the competitors. There wasn't anything going on that really helped to make that event a show. So yeah, I would say very, very disappointing. And regardless of whether or not it's run by volunteers, it does appear that there were sponsors that put money behind it, and you'd want your money back. I don't think there's not much that you can. It's not much you can take away from that event as a sponsor and think, well, that's great, we'll sponsor the next event. There doesn't seem to be a tremendous incentive to do so. I can't see the runs that would have been on the board as a result of supporting that event from a sponsor's perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's things that we can look at improving, and as I said, leading into it, there were positives to take away. The fact that people did compete, they did win themselves a national title. The tournament itself ran well, and the athletes involved would have been quite happy with winning themselves a national title, and legitimately. Yeah, the production side of things definitely need improving, and those elements that you just mentioned there are the things that can be improved upon. The streaming side of it could have been a lot better, could have been a large focus, and especially when you've got a worldwide potential audience that is interested in arm wrestling, and they see that there's an Australian national titles and they want to see a stream. And
that was supposed to be Australia's premier event, arm wrestling event. So you'd hate to think the rest of the world would think that was Australia's premier arm wrestling event, wouldn't you?
Yeah, it could have been done better, we'll say that. And moving forwards, hopefully that they'll be able to take those elements of what you just literally said a second ago and say, okay, look, these are the things that we need to do to make this event run in the way that it looks fantastic.
I would also say, but in some part, those things were already known. So, I mean, if you'd paid any attention to your screen over the last, I don't know, since childhood, for instance, you'd understand how a sporting event is presented. And if you've been paying any attention to what any of the best people in the world have been doing over the last 12 or so months as the world's opened up, well, you'd have some idea as to not only what to do, but what not to do, because we've spoken about it many times on this and the Daily Combat podcast about production values when it comes to arm wrestling events in particular, and some of the things that some of the larger promotions have done. We've called it out where it's not been.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, and but also giving credit where due. I find it really hard to give a lot of credit when it comes to this particular event.
Yeah, there was a lot of elements that, and especially the fact
big missed opportunity.
Yeah, especially the fact we were seeing it from the outsider's perspective, from the audience's perspective, is what I was watching this event from. And as a fan of arm wrestling, it's like, and this is why I'm on the committee. This is why I want to help grow the sport. And then when I see areas that could have been done a lot better, and it's like, well, this needs to happen at least in the next events, and you got to learn from these areas. But in saying that, there's probably people that were in the organisation of the area that have certain skills, and maybe their skill is not in the production side of things. It might be in getting the athletes there, or getting the venues, or getting the shirts, or getting that might be where their area of expertise lie. And then you would, if you know that this is an important element that needs to happen and you don't have the skills for it, that's where you would bring somebody else who does have the skills in.
Do you think the way that the event was presented to the world damaged its prestige moving forward? Will it continue to be the event that Australian arm wrestlers look forward to on the calendar every year, or maybe not?
I don't think it damaged it, because I think from what I've seen in the past, it's been similar to a lot of events that are around the world are of a similar caliber. And it is rare that you do find an event that does have high production value, and those are the ones that really do stand out, because it's like, okay, they've got the formula right here. With Neil Pickup and what he's been doing, I think probably the best example of arm wrestling presentation-wise, production-wise, was WAL. I think they nailed it. They absolutely got it perfectly correct.
Yep.
They had the raised stage, they had the fence keeping the corners, but they brought people in, and the way that they filmed it, it was tight, so it looked like the room was completely packed.
Good atmosphere.
Yeah, very rarely they would have a wide shot where you'd actually see there was only like 50 people in the room.
Exactly right.
But their introductions were fantastic. Their camera work was awesome. They built legacy moving forward. This match means something. He's working towards getting a title. You'd have these call-out moments and interviews with the athletes straight after the event, where they would say, I want... I remember Devin Larratt winning a match and saying, Ron Barth, I'm coming for you, Ron Barth.
Yeah.
It's you and me next. And then everyone's like, oh, I want to see that. That's going to be awesome.
That's your hook for next time.
Yeah. So those elements can happen, and they don't happen in most streams that are out there. It's usually an afterthought. The stream is an afterthought. And it's like, do you want to stream it? Sure. How are we going to do it? I don't know. Just turn your phone on and point it at the table. Yeah,
I think it could be the fact that the titles are just an arm wrestling event, and that's how they think of it. They don't think of it as an opportunity to promote the sport, or an opportunity to present the athletes well, or an opportunity to present the federation well. They might just think of it as an event to get out the way, so that they can crown their champions and move on, and everything else is very secondary. And it could well just be the case that, and just, as a casual observer, you'd have to assume that was probably the case, that it was an event first and everything else was very secondary, including how it looked to the outside world. In which case, I would say, probably that thinking is incorrect, and a massive miscalculation and a loss of opportunity. But, if that's how they're thinking of events moving forward, I think it can't help but damage the prestige, because the world has moved on in the last couple of years, and now it's not the federations that are putting on the best events. It's individuals, it's athletes themselves, it's groups of like-minded people that are coming together to put these events on, and seemingly at a much higher quality than perhaps the federations can either afford to or inclined to put together. So there was a lot to take out. There was a lot to unpack out of that event. But in terms of the athletes, did the results go the way that you expected? Mario Tembakis, again, big year, apart from not taking it away in Queensland. I think everywhere else he went, he scooped up the silverware. Just like schoolies, if you don't talk about what happens north of the border, it never happened. It never happened. So as I suggested to Mario the other day, never happened. Don't worry about it. So Mario walks away, and now question marks start to arise for what's next for Mario. He's climbed almost every mountain that there might be here in Australia, bar a couple, and maybe they're insurmountable. But I do believe there was a call out, there was a challenge, a Ryan Bowen challenge from Mario Tembakis. Yesterday, was it yesterday or earlier today? Yeah. So obviously Mario is hunting for even bigger trophies, even bigger prizes out there in the arm wrestling wilderness.
That's right.
So Mario, it was quite exciting to see Mario's year because he went away to the United States, I think earlier in the year, and tested his mettle against some of America's finest, and came back with a renewed confidence and has absolutely cleaned up almost everywhere he's gone this year.
Yeah.
And he came here originally to the Apex tournament in here in Adelaide last March.
Yep.
And cleaned up there, and
drinking a beer with his other arm.
Yeah, set the tone for the year to come for Mario. So 2022 has certainly been a breakout year for Mario, where he's really now head and shoulders above the rest of the pack, or the rest of the peloton, perhaps you'd say. You've got Lachlan Adair and Ryan Bowen, which are very recognised as being number one and number two now, you would say.
Yeah.
And now Mario's kind of elevated himself to that position just behind those guys, but well ahead of everybody else, it seems. So be a very, very interesting to see Mario's progression through 2023 as he starts meeting bigger and stronger challenges. Perhaps one of the highlights of his year would have been taking out Larry Wills.
That's a good point.
Yeah, so he's had some big wins over some big names in 2022 and enjoyed much success and big work ethic. So a lot of competitions. He's Garage Wars, Apex, Over the Top, of course, the Nationals, all of the states. So he's been a very, very busy, high volume competitor this year. So as well as his journeys overseas. So Mario has arm wrestled a lot and has gotten stronger seemingly with every pull. So so a big year 2023 to come for Mario, and I would imagine that there'll be more travel overseas as he starts to hunt down some formidable challenges as the well in Australia dries up for those for him.
Absolutely, yeah, and what a wonderful guy as well. When he came over for the Apex event, he helped me out in every way possible. He did stay at my place because it was just easier for him accommodation wise, and I was happy to do that to help him out and not have costs of hotels or anything like that. Not only did he clean half the house, he was polite, he was friendly to everybody. He helped set up the event like on the day. He competed the whole day, was nice to everybody, cordial in every single setup. He just said...
I'm sure if Mario wasn't competing, he would have fixed the live stream at the Nationals as well, but he was just distracted with winning everything.
That's right, he was too busy winning.
Yeah, too busy winning. Yeah. But yeah, he's a lovely guy, isn't he?
Absolutely.
Fantastic ambassador for the sport. The type of guy you'd like to see succeed.
That's right, absolutely. Yeah. Fantastic competitor, helped all throughout the day that we had the competition. We were the last to leave, literally. Yeah. And then we were there for so late, packing everything up. They'd actually locked the gates.
So you couldn't leave?
We couldn't leave.
No, you've only just left, actually.
Right.
It was back in March.
That's right. And then I had to go chase down, find the security guard who locked the gate while Mario's sitting in the car, like, having done an 18-hour day.
Just wants to sleep.
That's right. And then had to wait for this guy and me to come all the way back over and unlock this gate. And drove all the way home again. But great guy. So great to see him doing so well.
Yeah, absolutely. And Sam Burnett, another arm wrestler who's had a fantastic year this year. He's travelled internationally to test himself against the best, and has solidified himself as the top guy at 80 kilos and test himself time and time again. And he's held himself there for the last year or two now. So I think he competed against Phil to determine the unofficial title holder not too long ago, and then of course he's come through to nationals and made it official, and now has the strap over his shoulder and moves into 2023 having racked up a whole bunch of wins against some very formidable competitors. And Absolutely. So a wonderful family, great bunch of guys doing fantastic things as well. We wish them all the best for next year, but great performance from Sam once again, and having competed at so many of the states as well, and proven himself to be that elite arm wrestler at 80 kilos.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, again, wonderful guy. I don't know why everyone's so nice in arm wrestling.
I know. I want to find a hill now. Yeah.
Yeah, the
That's
top.
why people love to hate Ryan Bowen, because there's nobody else to hate.
That's right.
So it's
You.
yeah, redhead guy. Yeah. Just
The
think
big-
you're strong.
the big channel and
Got
think you're
vectors. Yeah.
Absolutely. But yeah, Sam Burnett, fantastic year, as you
And then you
mentioned.
find out Ryan Bowen's a nice guy, so I say, fuck.
This is an outrage. You're supposed to be the nasty guy.
That's right.
He was wonderful as well. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's just the fact that the people at the top don't have anything to prove, and especially in this sort of a sport. But some amazing competitors came through on the Nationals. Josh Barker winning the under-70s, Sam Burnett the under-80s, Tom Denkowski winning the under-90s.
Yep.
Under-100s, Mario Tembarkis, who we were just talking about, and the super heavyweight division was Lachlan Carpenter. So, yeah, fantastic. A very familiar name sets throughout that division. It was like, if you were going to bet on people, they were the ones you were going to be betting on. So
yeah. So there's a lot of names that now post COVID are solidifying themselves at the top of the totem pole, the post COVID totem pole of arm wrestlers. So great event, exciting to watch, great to see the progression of all of these athletes, and really exciting to see what happens in 2023. Hollywood Matt Connelly, any final thoughts?
Well, looking forward to things that we're going to be setting up in the future, and talking about those probably in next
upcoming episodes,
next episode when we've
Next
got everything sort of a little bit more solidified. But yes, an exciting next.
What are you
year.
Talking about exactly there?
Well, I don't know. Rumours flying
around. Rumours that we've started and tell each other.
That's right. Just thank you again for coming into your own show in your own studio.
Yep, it's my absolute pleasure. It was literally no work whatsoever. I work over there. And of course, Diamondback Fighting Championship putting on Apex Sports Fest. So whenever we refer to Apex, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about the Apex Sports Fest. This will be the third installment, third year in a row, first year post-COVID. So super keen to see how many people turn up, because this event's attracted thousands of people during COVID. So this event doesn't just include arm wrestling, although of course that's the highlight for our listeners and ourselves. But there's Roman Greco wrestling, there's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, there's strongman, there's some dudes that turn up with swords that look like ninjas. They're not ninjas, I've been told, but they do have real swords, and they do fight each other. You've got those guys. There's Sandshoe, MMA, of course, the whole night crescendos in a title belt on the line. DFC, I believe, light heavyweight championship will be decided at DFC 16, which is the card that'll end the night there at Apex Sports Fest 3.
It's unbelievable that you could have this event. Is incredible. Like,
it's insane.
It's ridiculous. If you're a combat sports fan of any measure at all, this is the event that you want to be going to. You've got the entire day's worth of like 30 different sports that you get to watch for free. Just walk around. It's at Nord Oval, and you can go check out arm wrestling. You said wrestling, jiu-jitsu, the medieval nights. You've got all of that. It's all happening all day. And then the end of the night, it's like, oh, what happens now? Well, there's just happens to be a Diamondback Fighting Championship card.
Yeah, which you'd normally pay, I don't know, between $60 and $100 to attend anyway. But so I think it's $65 or $70 admission for the whole day, and that's 12 hours. You don't have to stay the whole day. You know, you don't get locked in like mad unless you stay really late. So, but you can come in, you can check out your favourite sports and head off. You can see on the schedule when they're all going to be on, or you can simply hang out and enjoy the whole day. And if you do, well, Hollywood Matt Connelly is going to be there. I'm going to be there. There's look at that. Even one of Matt's biceps might be there.
Not the other one.
No, not the other one.
I'm not bringing that one.
No. They only get to come out if there's a split. And I think something also interesting is that for some of these events, members of the public can register and can have a go themselves. So strongman, for instance, is one of those things. So if you come along and you're a strong guy and you think, you know what, I can throw a log, you know what, give it a go. Yeah, you could walk away with some prize money, certainly a trophy.
Even just having a go would be awesome.
Yeah, arm wrestling tables. So there'll be we've got a tournament planned, but there's going to be plenty of tables there, plenty of afterpool, and so you may also be like Matt Connelly and just happen to arm wrestle some of the best arm wrestlers in the country and in the world within the first few pulls, because that's pretty much what happened to you. You jumped on at an event not too dissimilar to this, and the first person you pulled was was the guy that was doing the refereeing.
Yes.
At the Australian Federation.
Yes, Tom, you guys, yeah.
Yeah, and then the next guy was Devon Larratt.
Yeah, I went straight from an Australian champion to the world champion.
To the world champion,
Yeah.
right. So it could
That
just be
will
like
happen to you as well.
That's guaranteed to occur at the Apex Sports Fest. So Apex Sports
Guaranteed.
This is my ironclad guarantee.
Right.
Yeah.
Your lock of the week.
Yes. Monies won't be refunded. So we'll be there. We'll definitely be there. It's the 25th of February. It's 2023. It's going to be at the Nord Oval, which is here in Adelaide. So especially if you're in South Australia, no excuses. It's on your doorstep. This fantastic international level event. If you're interstate, get your flights all booked now because they're more expensive than they used to be, flights and stuff.
Yeah.
So, get in amongst it, book in, and make sure that you're here for the event. If you happen to know anybody coming for the event, I'd just say tag along because you're going to have a great time. And
there's so many things to see. It's
there's
ridiculous.
so much to say. And if you're not having a great time, we'll get you over to the arm wrestling tent and get you started. So anyway, that's enough from us for now. But thank you so much for joining us here on the Arm Wrestling Extra podcast. Hollywood,
Thanks to our sponsor, Real Estate Agents Group.
There they are. Yeah, on both arms now. I like these new shirts.
Yeah, that's it. I get to that's why I do the double bicep, so I can get it on both.
I thought we only had it on one because that was the good arm, and then
the strong arm.
Yeah, the strong arm, and then the other arm we just didn't have the logo on.
Nothing.
We didn't want weak arms having
invisible.
the logo associated.
Like do not look at this one. Or just an arrow pointing to the other one.
And if you want to get your own Hollywood Matt Connelly double bicep T-shirt, chest not included, then you can get that by heading over to Hollywood Matt Connelly's. Is it hollywoodmattconnelly.com.au?
.com. Just .com. Yeah.
We're just making it really easy.
Really
hollywoodmattconnelly.com. You can head over there. There's a bunch of cool shirts, and if you've been following the SH Titans, you might have a favourite character. I know Goku's particularly popular on the internet. It's the swagger. It's the Goku swagger. So you can jump on and get a Goku T-shirt or any of your favourites from the SA Titans arm wrestlers. So thank you so much for joining us again, and we'll look forward to bringing you a whole lot more of Arm Wrestling Extra next time.
Thanks, guys.